Hey everybody, Aaron Cowan, Sage Dynamics. This video we're going to be talking about ported handguns. So for the purpose of this video we're going to be talking about Glock 17C. They call it the compensated even though it's ported, which means it's got two elongated ports in the barrel. The purpose of those is to allow escaping gases from the chemical reaction that happens when you fire the round to aid in keeping the muzzle flatter or aid in helping you to get the muzzle back down sooner throughout recoil. This is the 9mm, obviously it's the 17. Ported guns have been around for quite some time, but they have remained somewhat of a curiosity, and you don't really see them in mainstream use very much. And there might be some reasons for that, but there also might be some myths and some misinformation and just some misunderstandings that come from your ported guns as to why they might not be as possible as maybe they could be. For this video, I'll be comparing the 17C OEM stock. The only thing that's different on this gun from how I bought it is I put some aftermarket sights on it, the Ameriglow caps. I'll be comparing it to a Glock 17. Both of them are Generation 4. The 17 is OEM. Everything is stock except for some framework and aftermarket sights. But beyond that, all the internals and of course the barrels are OEM from Glock. So what are some myths that you've heard about compensated, or I should say ported, handguns? And usually ported and compensated share the same myths, at least some of them anyway. Probably the first one I ever heard about ported handguns is they will kill your night vision. If you have been following the channel for a while, or if you're just new, you may have seen a video that I put out recently where we talked about muzzle flash at night under less than ideal, artificial and realistic low light conditions, and you probably at this point are like, hey, you know, that's not necessarily the case. But just to prove the point, here is me comparing the Glock 17 against the Glock 17C using the same two ammo. Throughout the process of this video I used two rounds. I used Hornaday's Critical Defense 135 grain, or Critical Duty, I'm sorry, 135 grain plus P, and I also used 124 grain LAX ball ammunition. I like that ammo because it's really peppy. It's got a lot of muzzle flash to it, so if there's going to be muzzle flash based on a firearms configuration design or accessories, that 124 is going to let us know. So there you go. It was not the end of the world. I did not go blind. I did not, in fact, get killed in the streets. Not that big of a deal, especially with the aid of a weapon light. If you're using a weapon light or a handheld light, it's going to seriously help you negate any negative drawbacks you get from that muzzle flash. Now, if you'll notice, the muzzle flash, and I already said this, the muzzle flash on that range ammo was much more significant than the muzzle flash you got off the self-defense ammo. And that's an issue of powder and how the rounds are designed. When companies design their self-defense ammunition, at least the good ones, they definitely factor in a lower flash powder. They don't want that bright, obnoxious muzzle flash because it could be a detriment to the shooter in a self-defense situation. The next myth or contextual misinformation you may have heard is close retention shooting. Those barrel ports could cause significant injuries, set you on fire, kill your family, destroy your DNA, break you down at the mitochondrial level. Any number of exaggerations have been said about those ports. Now, I will tell you this from experience, it does not feel good to shoot a ported gun or even a compensated gun from retention. And when I say feel good, I mean compared to your homeostasis of been feeling however you're naturally feeling. It's not something that's going to cause you any detrimental effects, but a caveat to that is depending on the ammunition you're shooting, you can experience some jacket separation that's going to come out of those ports. And that is going to feel like you're getting spalled. It's not going to be a nice thing to experience. But just for an anecdotal representation, I'm going to shoot both guns using the 135 Critical Duty plus P, and I'm going to hold a all-weather target over it just to see if it causes any damage to that paper material, which could somehow simulate any damage that you might take if you were to fire the gun from a retention position and actually be in line with the muzzle gases as they rise from the gun. So here is the paper I used on the OEM target backer. As you can see, it's still clean and white and pristine. There are no holes in it as far as I can tell, at least not that are visible to the naked eye. Now the one that I used for the 17C has been somewhat significantly deformed. You'll notice in the video it definitely takes more of a significant beating. That's because it was a good 2/3 of it was right over those ports that are in the top of the barrel, top of the slide. And there is a little bit of discoloration right there. Now, this just goes to show you, like, hey, yeah, it's going to be a little bit uncomfortable if you ever have to shoot one of these guns from retention, be it in class or, God forbid, in a real-life self-defense situation. That doesn't mean that you can't survive it and it's not going to cause any significant injury. Now, in regards to your peepers, if you're not wearing eye pro, it could be a significant issue. So that's definitely one drawback, potential drawback, to a ported barrel that you're not going to get from, obviously, an OEM barrel where the gases come out more of an explosive cone and they're directed away from the gun versus some of them being vented straight up by design to help keep that muzzle flat. So that is definitely a potential negative you can experience with the ported guns. Next up is my personal favorite bit of misinformation that you hear about ported guns. Based on their design, those gases that are escaping, that are being ported, that are being vented through the ports in the barrel, are venting explosive gases prior to the round uncorking from the gun. So you are going to lose some of your muzzle velocity, objectively speaking, based on the way that bullets are propelled. So those gases, which could otherwise be used to help propel the bullet to even greater speeds, are lost, so your bullet will objectively slow down. How much the bullet slows down is based on, one, the round that you're shooting to begin with, but also where the ports are. They're towards the end of the barrel, so there isn't a whole lot of barrel left for that bullet to gain the velocity that we're expecting it to get. So generally, and I'm not going to say this is across the board, but usually when I hear people talk about the ported handguns, they're quoting this fanciful number of like 200 or 300 feet per second is going to be lost, when that's just not the case. At least with the rounds that I've tested using a chronograph. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shoot my two chosen rounds, my 124 grain ball ammunition and my 135 grain plus P critical duty on a magneto speed. And we're going to see if, based on a 5-shot average per round per gun, if there's a significant loss in muzzle velocity from the 17C compared to the General 17. So first up, let's look at that critical duty. That's that common self-defense ammunition. Now this is plus P, so it's expected to be a little bit hotter than if it wasn't. Obviously, that's what the plus P is there for, to signify that you're going to get a little more pressure, a little bit more power, hopefully a little bit more feet per second. Up first, let's go ahead and take a look at the 17. Let's see what kind of muzzle velocity we got. So our 5-shot average was 1,098 feet per second. Now let's take a look at the 17C. Five-shot average, 1,071 feet per second. Now, I'm not super good at math, but I'm pretty sure the difference between those two rounds is not 200 or 300 feet per second. Does that mean that difference or that can't exist on different ammos? I'm not really sure. Like I said, I've never really seen that big of a discrepancy, but that's one of the most common bits of misinformation or myths that I hear about the ported handguns. Well, let's go ahead and take a look at the 124 grain. A 5-shot average of 1193. Pretty quick. Now let's take a look at the 17C. Coming in at 1139 5-shot average with the 124 grain LAX ammunition. Again, The differences that you sometimes see on the forums and on the interwebs and just in conversation at the gun store, difference, at least on these two ammunition types, just isn't there. And I think you find if you're able to perform this test yourself, you'd find the same results. People sometimes just don't quantify the information that they spew forth from their mouths, so I end up having to make a video like this. And I'm sure I'm not the first person to do it, and I'm sure other people will after me. So we took a look at our big 3 myths for compensated handguns. Of course, the question is going to be asked if it's not that bad, or if it's not as bad as people make it out to be, do you carry one? I don't. The reason I don't carry one, or I don't prefer one, is because of that potential spalling effect that you can get with certain types of ammunition. You see it more, I've seen it more in classes with students that have come with ported handguns. With ball ammunition, range ammunition, which for most people, that's the majority of what you're going to shoot is that. But injuries are injuries, right? And even though we're supposed to wear eye pro and ear pro and all our other PPE and safety gear, the potential for injury is still there. I know as an instructor, I have been hit by spalling from students' guns. Your ported guns, ported 17s, and aftermarket porting as well. I've been hit by spalling. So if I want something that's going to provide the same effects, the same benefits as a ported handgun, I'm just going to shoot a compensated handgun because I'm not going to have the same spalling concerns. The other advantages are still there. Not a huge deal. Obviously, we looked at the muzzle flash, and we also looked at the loss of potential feet per second on our rounds coming out of the gun. We're not losing a whole lot, at least on those 2 rounds. Now, I could bring 18 different ammunition types out here and eventually find one that has a consistent difference, but ballistics are ballistics. I don't think you're going to be able to find a huge variance or a huge discrepancy between 2 rounds performances just based on the way that bullets behave because of the laws of physics and gravity and all the other things that factor into why bullets do what they do and how they do them and how fast they do them. So I don't think that the ported handgun, the 17, like especially for Glock, the 17C, the 19C, 22C, 23C, I don't think it's the boogeyman that some people make it out to be. I think it's more of an old man yells at cloud situation. So if you're on the fence about, picking up a ported handgun potentially for carry or for duty or just because you're curious, the negatives just aren't there. Like I said, the only potential negative is that spalling concern you get from jacket separation of that jacket coming out through the ports, which does pepper you up pretty good and can lead to some blood loss, a little bit of blood loss. I've never seen a significant, like I have to go to the hospital right now type injury from it, but people definitely needed a Band-Aid. So for me, just my personal opinion, that's a reason why I would stay away from one for a carry gun. But I definitely keep one on hand just because sometimes questions like this have to be answered. And I know people who carry them, love them, swear by them, and they accept that potential negative because the likelihood of having to shoot someone from retention is pretty small. You don't see a lot of it happen. Doesn't mean it can't. There's definitely situations where people have fired and defended themselves from retention with their carry gun. But they're willing to accept that risk based on the positives they're getting from the gun. If you have any more questions on this topic or any other topic, you can drop them in the comment section below. I'm Aaron Count with Sage Dynamics. Train accordingly.